So bail was denied. The review application for the bail conditions were dismissed, and Pastor Coates could potentially remain behind bars for 2 more months until May, when his trial for breaching the public health orders finally winds its way through the court system. It is a dark day for religious freedom, but for all freedom, for charter rights. And I hope this decision today hangs like a millstone around the neck of our so-called conservative Premier Jason Kenney, one who once advocated for religious freedom. This is a blight on the justice system, what I saw here today. Sheila Gunn Reid for Rebel News, and I'm outside of the Edmonton Law Courts bringing you some very terrible news. Today was the second part of the bail review hearing for Pastor James Coates. So yesterday there was arguments heard on the bail review for Pastor James Coates, and today the judge made his decision. And I will come back to a point I'd like to make about the bail review hearing, because some parts of it were secret. Now, going back historically to explain who and what Pastor James Coates is and how he ended up in provincial custody for more than 2 weeks now. Pastor James Coates is the pastor at Grace Life Church west of Edmonton. That church has been full during the pandemic, full of congregants and worshipers and people who are finding their way to Christ and each other during the pandemic. The problem is, church services and worship services in Alberta are limited to 15% of capacity. Church services also must require their congregants to social distance and wear masks. Well, Grace Life Church is doing none of that. They say it violates their religious freedom. That's not how they worship. And they haven't had an instance of coronavirus in their church, and they have been full since at least the middle of the summer. So they have 6 months of historical data to say what we're doing is not dangerous. That has not stopped provincial authorities from cracking down on Pastor James Coates. He has been given a $1,200 lockdown ticket. The church has been under nearly constant surveillance each and every week from RCMP and health officials. Pastor Coates was arrested in his office and released February 7th, and he was released on a condition that he did not sign, that he would not say church service the following week, so on the 14th. Well, he did, because that's his religious freedom, and this country still has charter rights. However, Pastor James was then advised to turn himself in February 16th, and he has been held in maximum security provincial custody since then. And in fact, he spent the first 2 weeks of his provincial custody in basically solitary confinement. It's coronavirus quarantine that all provincial prisoners experience as part of their intake into the jail system. Yesterday, Pastor Coates' lawyer, James Kitchen of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, argued that Coates should be released. He's not a danger to the public. The worst he's going to do if you let him go is he's going to say service. And that, as we've seen from the data from the church, has caused no dangerous public health outcomes. The Crown Prosecutor, and let's talk about her for a little bit. The Crown Prosecutor, we only know her as the Public Health Prosecutor. We don't know her name because she is not giving her name, because she says she's been receiving threats from the public because of her involvement in the persecution of a Christian pastor. Now, if that is indeed true, I mean, that's horrible. No one should receive death threats. But surely she's a woman who works within the justice system. She has access to sheriffs, bailiffs, police. Pretty sure she knows how to get these people charged if she is experiencing threats. And we know the names of Crown prosecutors who are prosecuting mafia, gangsters, biker gangs, drug cartels. We know their names. But somehow, for this woman, Christians outraged that their pastor has been behind bars thanks to her for 2 weeks, well, that's a bridge too far for her. I don't know. I'd like to see the evidence, and she should be forced to present some to justify her remaining a secret prosecutor. We don't have secret prosecutors in Canada. The whole point of our open court system is that we can see everybody involved, and it helps us maintain confidence in the fact that our justice system is fair. Well, keeping her secret does nothing to further those goals. But getting back to the bail review. Now, the judge found today that there had been no error in law in keeping Pastor James behind bars since February 16th. He also found that there had been no error of the justice of the peace, who initially heard Pastor Coates' application for bail. Now, here's the thing. Pastor Coates was eligible for bail, and the justice of the peace on February 16th said that he could not justify Pastor Coates' detention, but that he would be released on an undertaking not to attend or conduct church services unless those church services comply with the public health orders that require masking, social distancing, and limiting the congregation, which is something that Pastor Coates, in good conscience, could not do. So he was shipped off to the maximum security remand center, where they, again, have had 2 outbreaks of COVID-19. The judge said that he took into account the affidavit of Erin Coates, that's Pastor Coates' wife, on the impact of the remand of her husband on her husband and her family. He also took into account the affidavit of Pastor Coates himself on the convictions of the Congregation of Grace Life. And I'm paraphrasing here because I was writing very fast. But Pastor Coates' affidavit basically said that the authority of the local church and the supreme authority of the Lord Jesus Christ cannot be overridden by the chief medical officer of health. And that the chief medical officer of health, in this case, Dina Hinshaw in Alberta, has no authority to determine the terms of worship of any church or congregation or any faith group in Canada, because they are not granted those authorities in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, the judge said in denying bail today that he has seen nothing new, that nothing new was argued, and that he was satisfied in the original conditions placed on Pastor Coates by the Justice of the Peace that said that Coates would not be released unless he signed an undertaking, that he could not even attend an overcapacity church service. The judge also cited, and I quote here, the unrepentant admission, end quote, of Pastor Coates that he would continue, and that was in Pastor Coates' own affidavit. The judge also said that the law remains valid and enforceable against Pastor Coates, and notwithstanding his religious freedom, Coates remains subject to the rule of law in Canada. So bail was denied, the review application for the bail conditions were dismissed, and Pastor Coates could potentially remain behind bars for 2 more months until May, when his trial for breaching the public health orders finally winds its way through the court system. It is a dark day for religious freedom, but for all freedom, for charter rights. And I hope this decision today hangs like a millstone around the neck of our so-called conservative Premier Jason Kenney, one who once advocated for religious freedom. This is a blight on the justice system, what I saw here today. We routinely see sex offenders and wife beaters and gangsters and violent criminals released from prison because they're willing to lie to a judge and say, oh yes, sir, judge, I'm going to comply with those bail conditions. And this man, who is a danger to nobody, the worst thing he's going to do if he gets out is say church service on Sunday and no one's going to get sick. He remains behind bars as a danger to the public. It's terrible. For Rebel News, outside of the Edmonton Law Courts, bringing you some tragic news, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. If you'd like to send a message to the provincial government that you still believe in religious freedom and charter rights, and that it is absolutely a blight on our entire province and our legal system, that there is a peaceful pastor behind bars in this province for the crime of saying service to a loving and willing congregation, please sign our petition at freepastorjames.com.